Joining me on the podcast today, Mr. Mike Allen from Aquarius Pools. Mr. Mike, thank you so much for coming in.
I appreciate you having me. Glad to be here.
I know this is your busy time of the year. We are in the dead of summer, and this apparently is when people want to build pools and people want to use pools.
Oh, that's it. And they all want them done yesterday. You know, this time of year, it's so hot. All these heat advisories we've had, we definitely are busy. We stay busy this time of year for sure.
Right on. Well, your office is right around the corner here in Old Mandeville.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the history of the business and you know when you guys started. Give me the rundown. I want to hear about it.
So my dad started the business. It's a family business in 1976. And when he started, there was no store or anything like that. He lived on Maroney Street in Old Mandeville, and he was doing fiberglass pools. That's all he did was just, you would see him run down the highways with these big fiberglass pools, police escorts. And he did that into probably the early 80s, the early to mid 80s. So about 10 years he did the fiberglass.
So at that time, because I've always seen those pools going up and down the interstate, and it's like a big, you know, it's a big production to move one of those suckers. Was he making his own molds at that time?
He wasn't. He just had a couple distributors he ordered them from, and he would stock them basically.
Gotcha. Because once you start making them, that's insanity.
Oh, yeah, that's insanity.
I've seen guys do that stuff with boats.
Yeah.
I've never seen a pool, but the size of them is extraordinary.
Yeah.
Extraordinary. So carry on.
So, but you know, back then the industry was so much different. You know, for Mandeville and Covington, you drove down 190, there was nothing in between the two. You know, it was woods and small towns, and the industry, there wasn't a very big demand for pools. But at some point, I guess he said he looked into the future and knew that gunite pools was the future, and he made a move to move to gunite, and from there he didn't look back. You know, at that time he kind of had a partner with him, and he thought he was nuts. He said, "You can't do this on the North Shore. You're gonna have to go to New Orleans if you want to build gunite pools, because there's just the population isn't here. The amount of people that want them, it's not going to work out."
So give me explain to me exactly what gunite is.
So gunite, well, there's two methods of gunite, and we use what's called shotcrete, and it's the strongest method. Basically, it's a concrete mix. It's sand, cement, and gravel and aggregate mix, and it's mixed at the concrete plant, and then when it shows up on site, it's pre-mixed, and then we blow it in. Everything's custom. You know, the shape, steps, benches, everything's hand carved. So it's a very meticulous process, and if you don't have a good crew that knows what they're doing, it won't be the same product, you know. But we have a crew it's actually out of Port Allen. We've been using for almost 40 years.
Wow.
So a long time. And, well, yeah, it's a good process. It's a strong method of pool construction.
So what year was it he started with the gunite?
Probably around 85, if I had to guess. Somewhere around 85, 86 is when he started getting into gunite.
So take me through the process of, you know, so somebody decides I want to get a pool. What happens?
So basically they call our office, tell us they're interested. Amy in my office, it's my office manager. She takes down all the information, and then we schedule an appointment. I do all of the sales calls. I go out and I meet the customer. We look at their yard. I take measurements of everything, take pictures of their house. And then, of course, we talk about what they want, whether it's a free-form pool or angular, geometric pool, hot tub, all that stuff. And from there, I design all the pools myself. I go back to my office. I have a computer program now where I can draw everything up. I put everything in 3D. And then our second appointment, they can come to my office. I have a big TV screen where I can put that pool in the yard, and they can see everything in 3D, their house, their window. You can even go in the house and look out the windows and see what it's going to look like when you're in your house.
I love it.
And if they want to make changes, make the pool bigger, add more deck, I can do it right in front of them. So, you know, a lot of people email for that kind of stuff for quotes, but we try to stay away from that because the more personal touch, we can get so much more done, and I feel like I can accomplish what they want a lot faster. And then from there, if they're ready to move forward with it, we sign a contract and we start working on permitting and getting them going.
So once you dig, then what's the next level of structure that comes in once the digging's done?
So basically, 90% of the time we dig them in one day, unless it's a really large pool. But and then we come in, we do all your rebar, we tie your rebar and prep it for gunite, do all your stub plumbing. And then usually within a week, we're gunniting that pool, weather permitting. So the first 2 steps come pretty quick, because the biggest risk for us too is once that hole is dug, until we get it shot with the shotcrete, cave-ins and things like that with rain is the biggest risk for us. But so we get it ready as quickly as we can. We get our crew in there, we schedule them, get it gun-eyed. We can do that within a day. And then from there, we go on to the next phases.
Is there is it like when you put down a slab where there's a moisture barrier between the metal and the earth, or what's the process look like?
Well, it's a pretty unique process. I mean, we do wet everything down to get the ground and everything moist, but then when we shoot it in, it's coming out of a high pressure nozzle, and you got to be a big, strong guy to hold on to that nozzle. It'll blow a lot of people around.
Really?
But they blow it in. We start with the walls and in the beam, which is the top of the pool, the structure, and then eventually we hand carve steps, benches, everything's custom.
Nice.
So everything's done by hand. There's no, all your steps, benches, tandem ledges, there's no mold for that. So it's literally them with a tape measure making cuts and getting it how it's supposed to look.
Cool.
So it's quite an art.
That's interesting. I've never witnessed it done.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of metal in there holding all that.
A lot of rebar. Yeah. We do a very tight cage on ours, tighter than most. And the way it's laid out is what's going to give you longevity. How we lay out our rebar, we double tie our floors to make sure everything is structurally sound. Because the biggest risk with pools, especially in South Louisiana, is cracking. Most areas of Louisiana, especially South Louisiana, Mandeville, the ground is constantly moving. You don't know it, but it's moving. And if it's not done correctly, that structure will fail. But with us, we give lifetime warranty on our structure, and my dad's done that since the beginning. And that means if that pool ever does fracture and leak, it doesn't matter if it's 1 year or 25 years, it's covered, and we take care of it.
I got people that want to go buy their jewelry at Sam's, and then they bring it to me to work on it and want to know why it doesn't hold up. Right. And so I'm like, listen, what can I tell you?
No.
You bought something that was the cheapest one you could find, and now you're dealing with an issue. And I know happens in all industry. It doesn't matter whether you're a roofer or a concrete guy or any service. There's levels. There's definitely levels.
There is, and it's the same concept with pools. If it's not only with us, we're very blessed. Everyone we put in someone's yard, all of our crews have been with us, almost all of them a minimum of 20 years, some of them 40.
Nice.
Unheard of in this industry.
For sure.
Now, and then supervision, between me and I have a superintendent too now, Tristan. We supervise everything. We're on the jobs daily. And I've been in this business since I was a kid. And when I go on a job site, it's almost second nature now. I may be talking to the crews, but I have a checklist in my mind where I'm looking and I can just spot things that most people don't see. And that's just from doing it for so long. And if you don't have that, there's things it's so easy to miss things. And it's so easy for things to get messed up. And but we're not perfect. We can make mistakes, but the big thing we always say is we don't bury them, we don't hide them. So if a mistake is made, we fix them and we honor our warranties. And at the end of the day, you're going to get the best quality product for a swimming pool in this area from us. And that's our goal on each and every pool.
That's the way to be, man. I make mistakes too in my work. Sometimes things don't go like I hope.
Yeah.
And I discovered early on, just if something goes wrong, fess up and fix it.
It's human nature.
Make it right.
We're not perfect.
That's right. Yeah. Anytime you're dealing with the elements,
right.
You've got heat to contend with, moisture. Your working times on this material that you're spraying up, it must be rather sensitive, I would imagine.
Especially during the summer. Like we just shot one this morning in Slidell, and we start usually around 7. Our crew's there at 6. We try to be done by noon because the hotter it gets, it can set up in the hoses, and it sets up quicker as they're trying to work it. So we jump on it as quick as we can in the morning before it gets too hot.
Can you test it for slump and things like that when you get it? Like you test for regular concrete materials?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
and we consistently cure at 8,000 psi, which is a very high cure rate.
That's twice as much as regular concrete.
Yeah. There's another method of gunite called the dry gun. That's basically, in a nutshell, is sand and cement, no gravel, no aggregate. That's what gives you most of your strength. But it's a cheaper mix. It's not pre-mixed. They're going to mix it in your driveway. It cures at 3,000 psi.
Oh,
Less than half the strength. Big
no.
difference.
What you want to do that for?
You tell
Cheaper.
me.
It's
You
cheaper,
tell me.
bruh.
Yeah, that's it.
I know a guy who knows a guy.
Right.
Famous last words.
Right. You know, and I always tell people, besides building or buying a house, a swimming pool is one of the biggest investments you can make in your lifetime. So if it's not done correctly, you know, that old saying, you get what you pay for, right? You're going to spend twice as much trying to fix it. And it's just, it's a slippery slope you can go down, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, cool, man. That's very interesting. Now, you mentioned y'all were in Slidell this morning. You know, what would you say your territory is, your regions that you work in primarily here?
Mostly North Shore, Covington, Mandeville, Slidell. We go to New Orleans. We go to the South Shore. We've been as far as Tylertown, Mississippi before. But we usually try to stay within an hour and a half of Mandeville. But, you know, just depending on the project, we will go a little further for the right job, you know.
Yeah, right on. How often do you get one of those, wow, you know, Playboy Mansion, grotto type?
Well, we get them. And we have one we finished last year in the sanctuary. It took us about 9 months to build it. But it is a knockout, and it's over 1,000 square foot pool. It's got a big fire bowl in the middle of it. It's unreal.
Oh, that's cool.
And you know, it's up for possibly winning a national award this year. So
really,
yeah. So
that's fantastic.
I love, you know, we do everything. We do from just the little basic 15 by 30s, you know, to all the way to these complex, extravagant pools that you see in the magazines. You know, I love doing both. I love the challenge of those projects like you just mentioned. Mm-hmm. But then the regular basic pools for a family with kids that just want something for their family to spend time in. You know, like for me personally growing up, some of my biggest memories are in the swimming pool with my brothers and my dad, you know, and my mom. So for me to be able to give that service to somebody, something that they're going to remember forever, you know, it's quite rewarding.
That is cool, man. I tell you what, I love when you get a good client and a good project and the people you can work with that you enjoy working with. You know, when you work with the public, sometimes it goes real smooth, sometimes it's a little bumpy. Most of the time, by and large, most of my interactions, and I think most people feel this way, as long as you're doing your job right, most of the time it goes really good.
Right.
You know, mostly you do have problems, and that's part of the business. And we talked about that earlier, how you deal with hang-ups or you know, unforeseen problems. Mm-hmm. How you deal with it a lot of times is going to determine how things pan out in the long run. You know.
Right.
But I love when you get somebody with an exciting project who has the means to do it, and they have the experience to say, you know, people. I like working for people who this ain't their first ring.
Right.
It's not their first custom job.
You're
you know,
right.
When you get somebody like that and they know what to expect, and that way when you start doing your work and you start performing, they see it and they know what it is. They recognize it. Like, oh, you're on it. I can tell. I've done this before.
Yeah, we get it, especially with people that have never built a pool. They don't realize what goes into it. Especially like when we dig the pool, you know, we have a skid steer that he's going to make probably 300 trips back and forth from that pool to the driveway to load trucks, you know. And we have skid steer, we have the excavator digging it, we have the crews forming it all at once. We got 10, 15 guys dig day, and it's an operation. And you know, when you build a house, you're not living there, right? So you don't see the construction, but this you watch it unfold in front of you in your backyard. So it's pretty cool.
It looks rough before it looks pretty.
It does. Sometimes I tell people, I'm not going to tell you a bomb's going to go off in your backyard, but it's going to look different until we get it. But once it's done, it's, you know, you'll never know we were even back there.
What's the best time for them to contact to get on the schedule?
Well, the biggest mistake people make is they wait until the first week it's 90 degrees in the late spring. They call and they want a pool. They want a pool, you know. But it takes us 6 to 8 weeks to build them, so then you lose half your summer. But typically we get busy after Mardi Gras, and when we go through about this time of year, once the kids go back to school, we tend to drop off a little bit, and then we pick back up for the fall. But the best time, if I had to pick, is probably October, because usually it's a very dry month. I know we've had a dry year, but dry month, and we don't have to, the weather's nice and it's not so hot, and we don't have to worry about freezes yet either. So, but we build them year round. Just in the winter, it tends to be, take a little bit longer, because if it gets below 40 degrees, we can't do anything with masonry, nothing with concrete. So I know we don't have much of winters here, but it does, between that and the rain, usually typically we have a lot more rain in the winter.
So it would be a
little bit longer.
It would be a good idea if you wanted to get a pool to start thinking about it for Christmas.
Yeah.
Get the pool for Christmas. Get on the books.
That's why a lot of people, they get them started now or the next month or two. It's done by Christmas. As soon as it gets hot next year, you jumping in. And you're not missing part of the summer. Because you didn't think about it till you were sweating, cutting the grass, saying, "Dang, I need a pool."
Every industry has nuances, and us, for example, we do a lot of custom jewelry, and our custom jewelry for Christmas picks up in September.
Wow.
Because the people who work with me regularly or have pieces done before, they know it takes time to put one of these things together.
Right.
And so we start getting busy in September, October for pieces to be delivered, by Christmas. By November, we shut down the custom orders by November, because you have to know, when it's time to stop. Because if you keep taking orders, you're going to end up making promises you can't deliver on, and that's the worst.
I'm sure you have some panic shoppers that come in last minute.
We do, and I tell you what, I have a little bit of wiggle room. We've learned over the years how to manage the time, because you have to. It's all you got is your time, and if you oversell it, you're screwed. And if you're not in charge of, if you're not in command of your time, you're just going to end up in a whirlwind. And that happens, and I get overwhelmed. There's been times that I've been shorthanded, recently, throughout the years. COVID was not good to us,
No, I can imagine.
Not from actually our business picked up.
Yeah.
So New Orleans was, New Orleans. And so they were doing everything they could to destroy the economy down there. And they were running people to the North Shore. For the first time in my career, people were getting in their cars and driving to Mandeville to shop for jewelry, because New Orleans was shut down.
Yeah.
And then, honestly, not to throw rocks at New Orleans, because it's not necessary, but people were just getting to the point where they were like, it ain't worth it.
Yeah.
It ain't worth it. And so we were getting these shoppers coming from, parts of New Orleans where they would normally go, somewhere in New Orleans, and they were like, meh. And, and they would just come look. They weren't, it wasn't like there's no place they can go. There's lots of lovely places in Metairie and whatnot, in the surrounding areas. But it's the idea of going downtown, no way. They don't want to do it. And people were coming, and shops were shut down. We were back open doing our thing, and we just had this huge rush of people from the city coming up here to shop, and it was great. We did lots of business, but we were shorthanded. It was very difficult. It's quite difficult to find people to do this kind of work. Yeah. I suspect you can't throw a rock and hit somebody who knows how to lay in these pools very well. You can meet a lot of guys who know how to form concrete, but it ain't the same. Right.
No, and when I started full time, I've been doing this for a little over 10 years now, full time. I worked in high school and college. I started out, my dad had me starting up the pool, starting the equipment, balancing chemicals. So I learned a lot of different areas. But when I came full time, I was the superintendent. Did all the, A to Z. I managed the jobs, made all the ordering, everything like that. And when COVID hit, my dad, he was older, and he had some respiratory issues. So he was like, we didn't know what was going on with COVID, right? So he was very high risk. So almost overnight, he lives on a 25-acre horse farm in Folsom. He shut the gate and says, son, I can't go out anymore. So I was on my own. And so overnight, I went from doing all the managing or supervising to doing the sales too. And that summer, we had lost our office manager, and right before COVID. So I didn't have an office manager. It was just me. I didn't have Tristan, my superintendent. It was me and my wife. And my wife, she came in, she ran my office, and I was getting, on a normal year during the summer, we might get 5 sales calls a week. I was running 15 to 20 a week.
Wow.
And I was going on the sales calls, and I was staying at my office till 10, 11 o'clock at night working on the quotes.
Do you think that's because people were stuck at home, sitting around looking at the backyard, going, "We need a pool"?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And a lot of people didn't do anything, but they were just home. They didn't have anything to do, and it was driving them nuts, you know? So a lot of it was me, trying to chase myself around, trying to keep up. But we had some good stuff come from it too. But if I wouldn't have had my wife in that office, I don't know what I would have done. She came in and saved me. So she took care of everything in that office, so I could sell pools and we could keep going. And then from there, my dad pretty much, he decided not to come back. He retired, and then it's the last 3 or 4 years I've been running everything, and that's when I hired Tristan to do what I was doing, my superintendent, and I've been training him, and he's came along a long way, and he's really helping me. And I have Amy in my office now, so my wife doesn't have to come every day. But,
Nice.
But she's running everything in the office. So.
Oh yeah, I work with my wife, and I tell people all the time. I say, listen, if it wasn't for her, it'd be like Sanford and Son around here.
Oh yeah,
It would. It really would. It would just be,
Yeah. No, and it's a stressful business. So sometimes I guess if I have a fault is I can't let things go. If I have a customer that is agitated or mad about something, even if it's a minor issue, I lose sleep at night. I can't let it go until I fix that problem. And my wife is always talking me off the ledge, right? Like just hey, this is what we need to do, in helping me, make sure I'm still a dad when I come home, right? Because at some point you got to turn it off, and that's one of the hardest things when I got thrown into it was learning. I had to learn that quick. Is at some point you got to turn it off and be a dad and a husband when you come home.
It's hard. It's hard to manage. It's people who have jobs where they go to their job and then they turn off the light and go home.
Yeah.
I don't have that kind of job.
No, when you own your own business, you don't. You're never off.
No. And I think in some industries, you can do your work and you can stop. But I think when you're making things, it's a different feeling. And I suspect maybe people who are in medicine, where they're constantly doing things, they're involved in and with people and doing work. I imagine it's hard to turn that stuff off and on too. But I think when you're making things and you're trying to serve your clients, and you have that feeling that you get, that anxiety, that's dedication. Is
right.
What that is.
Right.
That's your dedication bubbling to the surface. It's the fact that you have a responsibility and you don't want to let anything slip your mind, or because it happens sometimes. You get so many balls in the air and you got all this stuff going on, and the last thing you want to do is accidentally overlook somebody or overlook a problem or forget to order a product or something like that, So you have to get good at managing all that stuff.
Absolutely.
That's the secret of and it's not easy to do that either. When you decide, okay, I'm going to get organized.
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole nother job.
No, it is. It is, and but yeah, it could be stressful at times, but it's, my wife, she says my wife's name's Gina. If she always tells me if that's not a bad quality that you care that much, because some people, they go home and they turn that phone off and they don't care till the next day. But we're not that type of company.
No, I don't do that either.
And we definitely do it right. And my goal at the end of every job is that every single customer is happy with what I did in their backyard.
You have to take the money, and it's important for the business to be healthy. It's important to make good choices so that you do have economic, stability. But everything cannot be about every single little dollar, and I think that's where people go wrong.
Yeah, no, it definitely can. What my dad instilled in me from day one is take every project and imagine it's your pool that you're building. What would you do in this situation? For example, we had one we dug in Madisonville a couple weeks ago. Typically, we haul most of the dirt away, but we do keep some of it for grading around under the deck and everything like that. If it's good soil. When we started digging, it was horrible dirt. We got down about a foot and it was just that mushy clay and everything. So they called me and said, "What did we do?" I said, "Haul it away." That's going to cost me more bringing in, good sand, river sand, and everything that compacts. But if I put that under the deck, you're going to have problems. So it's the one of the things, until you dig, you don't know. But it costs me a little bit more, but I know at the end of the day, it's the right decision.
I was thinking about that. Do you do any testing to figure out what you're going to get to?
Typically, no. Certain areas you have to, like, on the South Shore, especially like Kenner and areas like that, you have to drive pilings, because the ground is so bad. If you don't, that pool's going to get out of level quick. But over here, you typically don't test the soil. No.
I never thought about that. You have to drive piles under the pools to keep the pool square.
So, some areas in the sanctuary, we've done that big pool I was telling you about in the sanctuary. We drove pilings for that one. Because you're going to spend that kind of money in that area. It's real close to the lake. Put pilings under it, because you don't want to risk it like your friend said, having problems that you got to tear it out.
And I didn't ask too much, but it could be something, along those lines, because Madisonville is not the greatest soil.
Right. No.
Either.
No, it's certain areas are worse than others, There's the biggest thing that is bad for pool builders is expansive clay. It's areas where the clay, when it gets wet, it expands, and that's what can push a pool up or make it move on you.
I wanted to ask you that about pushing pools up. So if you pump your pool out to work on the surface and whatnot, how quick can one move? If you get rain, can it happen overnight, or is it a slow process that happens?
It can happen within seconds. Typically, it depends on the water table. If it's like right now, it's probably pretty low risk in most areas to drain them. But when we drain them, we drill holes through the bottom, like when we're replastering them. If water is in the ground, it'll come into the pool and equalize. Okay, but we get calls a couple times a year. People they drain their pool themselves. We just fixed one in Lacombe. It popped out the ground 3 feet.
No kidding.
Yeah, he drained it. He came out the next day. It was out the ground 3 feet. So we had to get it back down, re-level it, tear out the deck. Pretty much a new pool besides the structure, and get it back level. But that's the biggest risk is when you drain them, that they can come out the ground.
Wow.
Yeah, because once they don't have all that weight in it, the buoyancy, it'll just pop it right up.
I was talking about that with my wife. She's like, "Oh, we need to drain the pool and do this and that." I said, those things will float. But I have never had it. I've never witnessed it happen, so I don't know a whole lot about it, but I've always heard that they will do it. So that's a real thing.
It is a real thing.
Caution people.
Caution. Yeah. Well, we tell people all the time, but people still do it, And but it's a mess to fix.
I did it when I first bought my house. My pool was in pretty rough shape, so I pumped it out and I sprayed some chemicals on it, and I was in there pressure washing and cleaning it, and I had the water out of it for a while.
Yeah.
I had no idea that they would float, and a friend of mine came by and he's like, "Hey dude, you get water back in this pool.
Yeah.
This thing will float on you." He said, if you catch some rain and the water table comes up, because right now the only reason it ain't floating is because water's probably down because it's summer.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize the how quickly that could go bad.
Or even when we're building them, after it's done, we have 2 or 3 holes in the floor that go all the way down to the gravel bed. So if it rains, water can come in the pool. If you don't have that, the biggest thing, I'll get customers every once in a while. They'll text me or call me and say, "It's raining. Should I throw a pump in the pool and pump it out?" I said, "No, don't do that." But because sometimes they'll fill all the way up with groundwater, and then once everything equalizes, we'll pump them back out. But it is, especially in Louisiana, it's a high risk.
Wow. Now, so you guys, I was thinking, with the your better quality luxury type, custom pool. So, tell me some of the cool features. Like you mentioned, one you had a fire pit in it.
Yeah, I'd have to show you pictures of it. That had a fire feature inside the pool, but fire has gotten very, very popular. Fire bowls and troughs and everything like that. But we have all, LED bubblers. They have bubblers now that's what shoots out the tannin leads that have LED lights synced in them. There's so many different things you can put on them now. And we try to stay educated on the latest and greatest, if you want to call it, right? We went to every year there's a national show. We went last year and came back with a few different things we try. And so.
Nice. And you guys do you do the install on everything?
Everything. Yes.
Everything. See, I think that's very interesting because I talk to a lot of people who do services and they're like, oh, no, we just do this. We don't do the that's.
The biggest thing you hear is, oh, well, I don't do the deck or I don't do this. But the problem you get into is if you have a problem and it's with multiple companies, then they're all pointing the fingers at each other on whose fault it is, right? But with us, all your warranties are with Aquarius. So if there's an issue, you only coming to me.
Big difference.
Yeah.
Big difference. Yeah, that is interesting because it's very easy. If something's not straight, the person who worked before usually blames the guy who was there before.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, well,
that's the classic.
The walls weren't straight. That's why the crown's messed up. Well, the sheetrock guys were no good. Well, if you got that kind of paint, who could possibly,
Right.
Everybody always passes it off on somebody else. So having all your eggs in one basket with one company, I think that's pretty interesting.
It is. And, now we do in-house warranty now. So, like with all your equipment, for example, if you don't have an in-house warranty rep, you got to call 1-800 number, whether it's Pentair or Jandy. Usually they're a week or two to get to you. So if your pump's broken, for example, in the summer, your pool gets green and it can be a mess. But now I have an in-house guy, Jared. He's actually a firefighter. I grew up with him. I've known him since I was about 12 years old, but he does all our warranty work on his off days. So I can get to you within 2 days.
Nice.
So that's another service we offer now.
There's value in that. Everything's great until you got a problem.
Oh, yeah.
Everything's super. Everybody got a great deal until you got a problem. Now what you going to do? And like you said, getting on that, oh, my God, calling customer service. It doesn't matter who you call nowadays. When you call a factory service thing, goodness gracious.
It's a 1-800 number. They make you try to pull a lot of stuff you don't know, serial numbers and model numbers. We keep all that. So all you got to do is say, Mike, my pump's broken, and we do everything from there.
I love it. Well, cool, man. I tell you what, I really do appreciate you coming in and taking the time to talk with me. I have a lot of respect for anybody who does anything on a high level. This stuff isn't easy.
No,
it doesn't matter what it is, but I really do appreciate, the fact that the level of attention and personal care that you give to what you do, and I certainly recognize it in you, and I do absolutely appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you having me. It's
Nothing
been
to
fun.
it, man. Nothing to it. We'll have to visit next time. We'll talk some duck hunting, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. We could do a whole podcast on that.
I tell you what, I guarantee. Here's what we'll do. Round 2, we won't talk business. We'll talk duck hunting next time.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, it's a deal. Thanks, man.
Thank you.